Excellent. Jeff, wonderful to meet you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
No, I'm glad you reached out for me. It's been a minute since you reached out, but I'm finally glad we got to catch up.
Yes, sometimes these things go back and forth, but I'm glad we caught up. Your story's fascinating, and I want to begin with, 5 years ago, we were really in the thick of this pandemic, trying to figure it out. Things were unfolding. How did you ultimately make it through that time period, and how has it influenced the way that you live life today?
Yeah, so when you go back, I just did an episode on this the other day in Virginia. I was a fitness owner, and so when
Wow.
you go back 5 years into 2020, last week the governor 5 years ago had issued a you can't fitness centers, restaurants were limited to 10 people. I owned and operated group exercise, so we're used to 5 people or 10 people was a small class for us. We had them, but so it absolutely was a disruptor for us. So I kind of got into talking about with my guest that I had on, and he was a public safety guy. So he gave the public safety end of what that pandemic side was for them and response and how they were navigating. And I kind of covered the business. So when you look at what we had to do was in being a gym owner, the absolute first thing that was created was uncertainty in the economy. And when you get uncertainty in the economy, people pull their membership. One of the first things what should be the last thing is your health and fitness is the first thing that gets cut when folks are in uncertain times. So our membership around this time is dropping like dramatically, and we are by the time we're in this April 1st, there's a couple more weeks and then we go through a full shutdown. I think that's April 17th is the date where we're actually shut down and not allowed to operate. Our gyms were and there was a couple other little business, but we were deemed non-essential. And absolutely, man, it was a struggle. We pivoted right now. If you go back 5 years ago, right now, I have a Zoom set up. I've got a computer. It's on our show floor where we do our workouts at. And I've got, 10 people in there. And what we did was we created boxes. And we did this early on is we took tape and we just taped off our floor and we created a 6 foot area. We created this 6 foot area. We put equipment in each box. So if you were coming in to work out, all you had to do is come in, change out your shoes. We had some hand sanitizer there, and then you would go to your box, and then we would control the flow of people coming and going. That way, you weren't around each other and breathing on one another. Because back then, man, the the issue was you were seeing all the things like, oh, if breathing, and your media was starting to tell us, well, you need to wash your hands and you need to wear a mask and this is this, and you're like, holy crap, is this it? Like, is this our grandstand moment of was it? I can't remember the TV show, The Walking Dead, right? Is this our Walking Dead moment? So all this we didn't know what we didn't know back then. All right, so we create the boxes. But our membership is like, yeah, got to go. Not, yeah, I'm not. I don't feel safe. I don't feel this. But our whole thing was like, hey, we're continuing to operate. We're meeting our agreements, and like so we pivoted between having individual boxes for everybody to work out in, and then we were streaming our classes online during that time. During this time 5 years ago, we're streaming online. We are and we have in-person classes. We haven't altered our schedules or anything like that. But man, there's we're getting pressure. We're getting pressure from all over about because we're the you're a health and fitness, like you're a mentor, you're the authority for doing what's right when it comes to health and fitness. So you're totally torn on hey, should I shut down my gym and encourage people to stay home? Hindsight, probably wouldn't do that again, but what we knew right now 5 years ago, like it was a lot of thought process going on for us.
Yeah, yeah, that would be a very tricky industry to be in. And that's the weird thing. Everybody that talked about the people that had the biggest threats in our society are the ones that needed to work out,
Yeah.
right? They were the ones that needed preemptive help to get to a better place. So the irony is the places that were going to give that were the first ones to close down. That's weird.
Ain't that so? That I mean, that's what I look at. Like at the gym was also a place where we congregated. The workout, I always told people, the workout's a byproduct of being in the room.
Yeah.
Man, it's positive. It's people that are like-minded individuals that are goal-oriented. They're a lot of business folks that are, so the workout was a byproduct of the community. Getting healthy was a byproduct of being able to come in for 30 minutes and do your workout session with everybody that was in there, and you enjoyed being around those folks, right? So um, once we started doing that, it put up this it put up this wall to where you and I could do this. We could jump on Zoom, but we weren't. It took away our ability to talk and maybe sit down and call BS and and be able to say, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right, right? So the more and more distance they put between us being able to congregate type stuff. You know how it is when people get together, good ideas are born.
Yeah.
Sometimes bad ideas are born too, but that was you're right on that. And when you go back and look at what the role that health and fitness played into vaccine, no vaccine, just the your response, your body's ability to get a cold and be able to right. So all the things that we go through um, just from the health side of it is I think fitness. Listen, and I tell people this. I don't know where you are with it. When I say fit, if you want to come in and do group exercise with us back then, I'm not coaching anymore, and in that space. But you know, sometimes my advice to people was put on a pair of shoes and go walk for 30 minutes. You don't have to go we're not talking full on CrossFit. We're not talking just something to keep yourself healthy and moving.
Yeah, for sure. So here in 2025, let's get to the brass tacks. If I put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, career day, sixth graders, let's say, and one of the kids wants to know what you do for a living, what's your answer?
Business strategist and motivational speaker is probably the title that I'm going to put out there. Uh, More motivational speakers probably going to be that side. I'd probably sixth grade class. I'd probably say I help people start businesses and I speak for a living, right? So something they could really relate to.
Yeah.
You might understand business strategist. I come along and help people either start, grow, whatever they're looking for. I just kind of help be a extra set of ears, and then I enjoy talking about this. My time during COVID as a gym owner, right? It's very
Yeah.
motivational of being like, hey, we survived.
So let me ask you this. What did you want to be when you were in the sixth grade? What was your life that you wanted to have?
Yeah, so you teed me up perfectly here. So, I asked that question too, Joe. That is when you ask someone what they want to be with a little kid, they light up, right?
Oh
If you
yeah.
ever, like, it is one of those. It's a great question to hit people with because here's what I learned. Most people didn't get remotely clear. Like I had one guy one day, he was like, I was going to be a baseball announcer. I'm like, baseball announcer? Where? He goes, yeah. And I said, why do you do it? He goes, I don't know. I was going to be, and when I was in sixth grade, I told my teacher for career day I was going to be an undercover police officer.
Okay.
Now, Miami Vice was on. I was drinking all the Miami Vice Kool-Aid. I was dressing like Crockett. He was my guy, and my teacher the next day brought in an article, and she brought in an article where in the city adjacent to where I was growing up, they did this drug bust on the airport, and it was very Miami Vice-ish, and they had some pictures. They had pictures of planes. She was like, "Hey, look, this is in our area," and I was like, "Yeah, that's going to be me one day." So I'll fast forward for you, but that's what I went on to do. Right, I
Yeah.
got to go do that.
Yeah.
Um, I got to go do that job that I told my teacher that I was going to be and work with some of the guys that was in that article and all that cool stuff. So
So what were these foundational elements that were planted in you? Take me back to where you were born and raised. What were these seeds planted that made you want to do this work and ultimately to do it and then to motivate people today in your line of work that you're doing?
yeah, if you go back, man, man, I'm a product of a single mom that was teenage mom, right? It's a single teenage, so handicapped with a lot of reasons why you're not going to make it in coming out of a rural community. And my her dad, um, he liked to he drank too much, more of an alcoholic, but he was violent when he would indulge in alcohol. And so there was always kind of drama going on. My mom was absolutely, um, I was raised by aunts and uncles that was around that. So I was just exposed to violence. And my grandpa liked to shoot. And so the cops was at the house. So I always like when people ask me this, I'll tell them like, look, man, when the cops are at your house, you're either going to be a cop or a criminal. It's easy. It's an easy path for an assumption to be made. And I always looked at, um, through my life, the ambulance, would show up for in different times and different causes. And I had my grandmother had committed suicide, and I found her when I was in sixth grade. So coming out of sixth grade, so around EMS people, and they was always there in my life to help me. And there was always the people that showed up, and so they really inspired me that and I want to be like them. And so my influences, when you go back to some of the stuff I talk about your influences being the five people you allow in your life, was those were my circle of influences. And then you get into middle school, and one of my best friends to this day, he was a rescue squad guy. And so I saw his jacket. I was like, hey, I want to, that looks cool. I want to do that. And he's like, oh yeah, come join me. So at 15, man, I kicked off into public safety and did all the EMT and ambulance, and ended up as a 911 dispatcher, and that kind of propelled me into law enforcement. So, but I have I collapsed that into a few sentences, but you're talking probably 10-ish year term of EMS hospital. I worked as a tech in a hospital and ambulance. If it didn't have lights or sirens, I didn't mess with it
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
So how did you mentally do that all of those years? Were there ever times where you thought it's getting too heavy, or has this always been woven into your DNA to help people and to get that adrenaline rush?
It was earlier on, and what I didn't realize at the time was I probably didn't process. I'm still kind of working through that, but there was a lot I didn't process, and a lot of things that I didn't really. The thing that one of the things that I say that created a little bit of just either going to deal with it now or you're going to do it later.
Yeah.
I was able to push it off through growing up in chaos, EMS and volunteer rescue squad fire, all that stuff that I got to do. I got to live. I got to keep living in chaos.
Yeah.
So there was always something going on. So everything I was used to over here as a kid, it continued on in my teenage years, and then that's where my identity was inside of EMS. That's all I knew. Like I didn't know. I knew all these things, and then one of the things I figured out was it was easy for me to hide a lot of this kid stuff, processing relation, all the stuff that I was exposed to. I was able to hide that inside of EMS. And then as time went on, it kind of opened up into where I started getting more time to myself. And the more time I had to myself, the more my mind would turn on, and um, I'd have destructive behaviors, drink too much, I struggled, cultivating relationships and long-term relationships, and just because I only knew what I knew, and the people that were pouring into me as much as they wanted me to listen, I wasn't ready to listen at the time. Um, so as positive as it was for this kid and me able to impact my community and all those things, there were some negative sides that came along with it too.
So let me ask you this. Who ultimately was your inspirational force, your heroic figure that helped you evolve into who you are today?
Probably, when you go back to a very pivotal moment was I got arrested for DUI while I was still a police officer. And that trooper, man, he plays a pivotal role. Like he was the trooper came along and at the time it was absolutely the worst thing that ever happened to me. And you don't see the future, you don't see the cloud because my career, everything I knew came to an end that day. And I didn't know anything different, and I was struggling to find identity. But what ends up happening is, my I end up finding a job and working and stuff. And the trooper, his impactful, just him having to deal with me that night, and he becomes a pivotal figure. Then you throw in my wife, my mom, all those people that came alongside me who played a role, but the um, the trooper in that story, man, he he plays a big role. He's the one that kind of he sets me off on this path to be able to have this conversation with you, man. And when you as the story comes together, man, just his impact in my life, as negative as it was, man, it becomes this amazing story that I get to tell today.
Does he know this? Have you reconvened with him?
So Trooper passed away. He had reached out. He kind of tried to connect with me in so you look, that's probably '07. So I'm not in a I'm not I'm still trying to find my identity for about 3 years probably, man. And my son's born. Like life is really taking hold and all these positive things. I'm learning business. I'm working in business. And probably 4 years into that, I was really, my mind had turned a little bit of mindset shift where I'm working on more personal development stuff. So when he tried to reach out for me, he stopped by my work and I just didn't want to talk to him. So I was in a good spot. And then maybe a year or so passed, and then he ends up, I got word that he had passed away. Nothing, just went out hunting, sat down by a tree, and they he didn't come home. They walk out, find him passed away. Right? Nothing negative, natural causes. So he and I never connected, but I ended up connecting with his son through a very powerful moment.
Wow. So let me ask you this. If you could meet one person alive on the planet right now that's inspirational, that's overcome, that's evolved into a great place, that might help you on your journey, is there anyone out there you would like to either interview on your show or meet?
I don't, man, I'm a people guy. I don't. Nobody stands out when
Yeah.
you say that. Like here, some of my. This happened to me 3 times in the last couple months. Some of my biggest impactful conversations that I was like, okay, you've been placed here to help give me this advice or tell me what I needed to hear at this moment. They've happened in it, just off me randomly finding a podcast guest and us talking. All of a sudden they go, Jeff, I'm getting this. I need to tell you this. And they give me this just and I'm like, holy crap. And I wrote some of them, like I keep notes. And
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, why did you tell me that? I'll write it down. And they come from, they're not famous. They're not, those are just people interacting with people, man. So I don't want to overlook the power of this conversation and those other conversations. Right now, man, you're absolutely the most impactful person in my life because I'm getting to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I dig it. I totally get that. And I'm curious, how do you balance all of this out? You're walking into situations where you have to make people's lives better, which can be heavy. But you also have a soul. You have things that you're doing with your life. How do you balance that? What motivates you every day to wake up to do that?
Um, you know, you really start to figure out your purpose, and when you keep getting pushed into specific areas, you realize that whether it be universe, God, whatever folks that want to tune into, you realize that you're following your purpose. And I kind of took this. I chased money and business and a lot of things, and the more I chased it, the further it seemed like it got away. And I just adapted this mindset that I'm going to pay attention to the opportunities. I'm going to pay attention to the conversations. I'm going to pay attention to the opportunity that I have to whatever conversation that might look like. I pay really close attention to what not only am I teaching or where they're kind of at in their life, but also for what I'm what my purpose is in that. So I try to wake up every day knowing that every day is full of purpose and it's up to me to execute on that purpose and be able to fulfill that. It comes from and it wasn't always like that, man. I'd wake up chasing money and thinking about business and what I could do to grow here, grow there, and the after we got back open in our gym, I was telling you about the trooper's son. Him and his wife Danny, his name's Danny and Jenny Austin. She ends up Jenny's a member at my gym, unbeknownst to everyone of our connection. And we there was a point in time that Danny and I are able to connect. And he's like, he comes up and introduces himself, and he's like, "Hey, man, I just want to tell you," and he shares this powerful moment with me of how I had impacted their life, and just the influence that I had was unaware that I had on him and his wife. And then we go to dinner later, and he and I are sitting side by side, and he was like, um, during the story, he had told me about how they had he and his wife had a baby that had passed away, and the toll that it had took on them in their life. I had no clue who they were other than members at my gym and people that was coming into my life. And when he and I sat down for dinner, he was like, "Hey, I heard you used to be a police officer." I'm like, "Yeah, I was." And he goes, "My dad was a trooper." And I'm like, "Where?" And he goes, "Down in Franklin County." And his dad ended up being the trooper that arrested me. And you want to talk about like full circle going back to that what changed my life and the hero that's in my story, man. He plays a big role because ultimately his son and daughter-in-law end up I'm end up impacting them, and we end up impacting each other in a very, very positive way. And when that came to life for me, man, I really I wanted to, it scared me a little bit because it was such a powerful moment. I had to process it, and I didn't process it overnight. It took me about a year to really wrap my arms around what I wanted to do with it. And part of it's telling it, right? Is inspiring other people and letting other people know that that rock bottom moment that you're in right now is just a piece of the puzzle. It's not a rock bottom moment. It's just where you're supposed to be, and you're viewing it wrong. I wrote something on it the other day. Um, I wrote something on it the other day, and I wanted to share it with you. And it said, right here it is. When you feel like you're falling apart, what if you're not really falling apart? You're just falling into place.
Yep.
Right. That's so when I that so I got right with him. Me and him connected. I ended up after about a year or so. I wanted to tell the story, and I sat down with him and them and just shared everything with him. And then so how I got to meet the trooper to answer your question that you asked me hours ago. It seems like was through Danny, and Danny was able to fill me in on his dad and his dad's life and the conversations they had about me and all these things. So just really, really powerful, dude.
So let me ask you this. If you were to walk into a room of everybody that you've coached or everybody that's known you as a speaker in a professional sense, and you could walk up to a podium and tell all of those people in that room something fun about you, a fun story, a fun anecdote, what story, what would you tell that room?
Oh man, that's a tough one. That's probably the harder one that I've been asked because I got so many. I had the bit. Listen, man, it's some of my I've done some stand up comedy, and my grandfather was arrested for DUI on a tractor, and
Wow.
so when you hear my accent and you throw in that, and then there's some humor. I'd love to tell the humor people. I was like, how many in are you like in a rough spot or whatever? I'm like, I got arrested for DUI as a police officer. You want to talk about awkward? You want to, yeah. So I'd make fun of about everything that I possibly can. I enjoy humor. I enjoy comedy. So it depends. I enjoy telling some of the stories of just growing up and like that grandfather story of as much hell as it was back then. There is some comical things that really help people find perspective with it. Then you got all the stuff in law enforcement that we were able to do, doing undercover work. You get to operate in undercover work, and a lot of times it takes me a second, Joe, to turn those stories on, and sometimes you got to get my brain reconnected, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, let me tell you this story or this would happen if because I live some of those you guard because there are stories we don't talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
So you have to get my brain working. I will. I just enjoy being fun, having a good time,
Yeah,
man.
no, and that's a great story about the tractor. So, of all of this that you've been through, the highs and lows, the peaks, the valleys, at this point right now at your evolved state, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
My kids,
Yeah,
being a dad,
yeah,
my kids, being a dad, being able to, and listen, man, I probably I've been saying this wrong. Is my mom, my mom, she made some tough decisions. She made some good decisions. She got me to where I could have this. She put me in positions where she may not have been around all the time, and of course she was having to do and look after herself too. But man, I didn't ever go to bed hungry.
yeah,
And so she's set me on a path to where I can really, I always called it breaking the curses, and I got a little sign there for it. But it wasn't. I was able not to pass along. I was able to grow up enough and have kids at the right time to where I didn't pass the negative side of me along. So I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of what they do and what they're able to accomplish. And there's nothing wrong with being proud of yourself too. And
Yeah.
but I'm really happy of the role I get to play for them as a dad.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. There's all these different people in your life, from being a podcast host to a speaker to a coach, but ultimately you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I'm a really I'm a guy that has a lot of. I think sometimes I have a lot to offer if you get to know
Yeah.
them, and we're able to use the platforms now to be able to like, hey man, I'm simple. Like when I owned the gym, when husbands would finally come in, they would be like, oh, and there'd be this immediate connection. A lot of them was thinking they was going to go to Body by Jake, and there was going to be this guy that was going to pump them up. I'm just a simple. I'm simple. I'm common sense oriented, and I try to approach everything. And the advice I give is, what would I do if I was in that situation? And that's it. Like I try to live a simple life. I try to impact people as uh, 10 times, 20 times more than what they ever impacted me. Leave them better than I found them.
Yeah.
And we approach that type mentality. But I feel like simplicity and being just a very simple person with big ideas, big concepts. There's a lot to be said for that.
What do you like the best about living in Virginia?
Man, Virginia weather can be a little crazy. It can be 70 at Christmas, 80 at Christmas, and
Yep.
then you can have snow. Proximity to history, we were talking about that when you opened up. Virginia is centrally located on the East Coast, so I can be, and it's one of your founding colonies, so rich history, proximity to DC. I can be at the nation's capital to take in everything it has to offer. But then Virginia sometimes, dude, is like it's like California is. I can be at the Blue Ridge Mountains today and hike, and then I can go 5 hours east, and I can be sitting on the beach.
Yeah.
So just proximity to there's all sorts of things that you can do here from just from that sense. It's mountains one day and beach the next. I had a lady tell me, it's like, why do you live in California? And she's like, oh, well, I can ski 1 hour and I can be at the beach the next. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, I can do that in Virginia.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, hey, man, if anyone wants to tune into your podcast, Breaking the Curse, they want to hire you, any of the good business, anything going on in your world, where can they go to do that?
Easiest place, jeffreyrobertson.com, man. Thank you for letting me share that. jeffreyrobertson.com. You'll see my podcast link. You'll see my social links. If you follow me on Instagram, shoot me a message on Instagram. That's me responding. So any of that, if you want to reach out through my website, and you'll see my social links on jeffreyrobertson.com. That's the easiest way.
All right. Love it. Jeffrey, thank you, sir. I appreciate your story. Appreciate your time. Best of luck with everything.
I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you. Take care. Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.